Hello everybody and welcome back to Fintech Week London. We're here at day 2 and today I'm very pleased to be joined by Charlotte Crosswell. Charlotte, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today. And we're going to be talking a lot about everything about open banking today, which is very, very exciting. But before we get on to that, we must give our viewers a chance, if they don't already know who you are, to give them an insight into who you are and where you come from today, please.
Thanks. So I'm chair and trustee of the Open Banking Implementation Entity, and that was set up to deliver the standards behind the growth of open banking in the UK, which very much has probably triggered some of the open banking growth around the world as well. So that's my role. I'm there to implement the roadmap that's been agreed as part of a competition remedy, and also as part of that role I will then transition and sign off the transition plan for movement to a future entity.
Future entity, and we're going to be talking about that a bit later. It's a very, very exciting move. But yeah, we should just get straight into it, I think. So you mentioned about open banking in the UK. I think right now the stats are about 6.1 million.
Yep, just over 6 million. Yeah.
Is it right?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So we see open banking has enjoyed massive success in the UK. Why is that?
So obviously it got founded from PSD2 and the directive, which we saw across Europe. But what was unique into the UK is the CMA then had their market investigation order, where they said they wanted to set up an entity to deliver a common standard that everyone could sign up to. And I think we could all agree that that has driven a lot of the growth and success of open banking and triggered some great innovation around the world as well. So it's important that the regulators started it, the legislation was there. But now, of course, what we're seeing is the whole industry involved in this and getting involved in the future of open banking beyond what's just in the order, and I think bringing some great innovation into financial services.
Yes, it's a very, very exciting time, and it's a real hot topic here at Fintech Week London. In terms of, I was recently reading the impact report, which I found very, very interesting. It was covered by the Fintech Times. It's a great thing to read and produce. But one thing that really stood out to me is it really pioneered or advocated cloud accounting, which I thought was really, really interesting. And it's something that we've seen bring great benefits to the people that engage in it. But in the current climate, which of course is very tough at the moment, how do you see cloud accounting bringing benefits to its users?
It's a great question, because cloud accounting started before the growth of open banking, but what open banking has allowed it to do is give that visibility for SMEs to understand more about their financial services journey. And the statistics that we put out with the report showed that 70% of firms found that it gave more transparency, helped them understand it more, and therefore helped them hopefully deliver cost savings for their own businesses, which in future will hopefully get them back on their feet post-COVID. And I've always said that fintech is there to drive benefits for consumers and for SMEs, and that's what it's there for. So it's obviously we have the fintechs delivering it, we have the big banks now all bringing forward their innovation journeys, but it's important that we look at the outputs of that. And with cloud accounting, if that allows us to have a seamless transition, said for those firms to understand more about how they can deliver on better cost savings, how they can get a better deal out of their financial services journey, then that's incredibly important, and it's fantastic to see how much open banking has played a key role in that.
You're absolutely right, and it's something that the report really emphasised, which I thought was really interesting. But to get a gauge on it and the current climate as well is a fantastic answer. Thank you very much. And in terms of, you mentioned a bit in what we previously said in the interviews about the insight that it's providing with businesses that are engaged in it. How is open banking providing better insight?
What it allows these firms to do is obviously give access to the data to a trusted third-party provider. You're not putting that out into the ether. They can share that data with firms who will then deliver that transparency to them. So before they might have chosen one financial service provider, given them all their data, but didn't necessarily have comparison there or competition coming in. Them allowing to give the data out there so that they can determine who can have their data, how it can be shared, and then the cost savings that can be delivered back to them is incredibly important. And in turn, that helps the SMEs understand it more themselves as well, by allowing that data to go out to third parties, come back into them with the different options for them, will hopefully help them get a better grasp of financial services over time as well, which is incredibly important, especially to some of the smaller SMEs across the UK.
You're absolutely right, and I think with people like us in the industry, we're very in touch with open banking and the benefits of it. But when these smaller businesses who may not have quite such an in-depth understanding of it, it's really beneficial to see how it's driving a force for good for these people in a very challenging time, of course. So at the beginning of our interview, you mentioned that the OBIE is actually transitioning into a future entity.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about the transition and what does that set out to achieve?
Yeah, so most people would know us as OBIE, the Open Banking Implementation Entity, and that's literally what it was. It was to implement the competition remedy set out by the CMA, which is against the CMA 9, the 9 biggest deposit takers in the UK. And what we've obviously seen is a proliferation of industry solutions across lots of different parts of financial services. So what the OBIE now has to do is move those functions into an entity. Now obviously that's not for the CMA to determine what that future entity is going to be doing, because that's the end of their journey, although they are responsible for protecting the order and protecting the momentum behind the order, so ensuring that 6 million users continues to grow, and that's part of it. But what we have is the FCA and the PSR will be co-chairs of a new oversight committee with CMA and Treasury alongside them as observers to then determine what will come next. And that will be beyond the competition remedy. And I think that's what everyone's very excited about. Every week I get asked, can you work on this? We can't, because I'm a trustee of that remedy. But obviously, we would love to see the open banking grow under a new entity, under a new potential mandate, and I think that's what everyone's quite excited about, and industry's really weighing in now to give their views into that oversight committee, who in turn are obviously very keen to hear from industry as well.
Absolutely, and in terms of we discussed the success of open banking in the UK, but how can we ensure? Well, what can we do to ensure that that's not just a trend, that's here to stay, and on an upward trajectory as well?
I think everyone's recognised that what we're seeing is a huge growth in open banking payments. People using open banking to have seamless payments, and certainly the PSR has really been behind the vision of that as well, and us working with partners across the industry to deliver on that. So that's where we've seen this real hockey stick growth through 2022, and I think we can all argue that that's probably been accelerated because of COVID and so many people using online payments to drive their businesses forward. I think what others are excited about obviously is the open banking data piece of this, because obviously open banking it's quite a confusing name if you think about it. What are you using open banking for? Yeah. But it's the technology that obviously shares that data and shares the payments rails. And I think that's incredibly important, because the data is the ones that are going to help people understand it. Perhaps that helps with financial well-being, financial wellness, and gives people, as I said, a better grasp of their financial services journey. And I think that's what we're seeing from the fintechs, from third-party providers, but also from the large financial institutions as well. The ability to give their customers, their consumers, their small businesses, a better deal with them, and give them more transparency that we just didn't have many years ago. And the joys of open banking is us being able to provide that, and providing the standards everyone signs up to in the UK. It's the common standard. It drives it forward. Obviously, we don't do that on our own. The OBIE works with lots of partners around the industry, but it is great to see the innovation coming in this particular segment on fintech that's going to underpin so much innovation in the future.
Well, it's a fantastic time for open banking, and a very exciting time too. In terms of, as you mentioned, it's sort of a very difficult thing to understand, and it's got a lot of dynamic pieces to it, as you described. Do you think that there's any major misconceptions about open banking, and how can they be put right?
I think the funny thing I think about open banking, and even I found this when I joined the organisation just under a year ago, it was just the amount of acronyms. What do these acronyms mean? What is a VRP? You generally don't need a consumer to understand what a VRP is. You do need to make them understand how they can use this for seamless payments, and how they can provide their data and share that with the trusted third party. I think that's the most important. I think if we put a question out, would you like to pay by open banking? We'd probably confuse everybody. But what we're actually seeing is obviously industries, the industry providers, using lots of different terminology to help them understand it as just another payment method or just a way of sharing their data. But anyone who's used it to go and get their mortgage, to find out more about their savings, to sit there, as I said, and maybe look at how their loans can be repaid, will understand that just by giving that access, it's giving them such a seamless transition now and such an easier journey through the process. So I think everyone's excited about obviously the growth we've seen in payments, but really our next phase will probably be the open banking data piece of this, and as I said, driving a lot of innovation going forward.
That's really fantastic. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, Charlotte, and I wish we could speak all day. But thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Fintech Week London Day 2.
I know, well, I'm looking forward to it, and thanks for everything that Fintech Times does as well, because you do a fantastic job to shine a light on the industry.